everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Recession Resistant Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Cobb, co-founder of HBG Capital. And today I've got Shane Lex on the podcast. Shane Lex is the VP of Loan Originations for Anchor Loans. These guys do roughly $2 billion in loans every single year. I've been wanting to get them on the podcast for a while. I'm excited to jump into everything from interest rates, the market today, what's going on in the lending world. Shane, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. We're happy to be here.
Yeah, dude, I'm excited. We had a pretty good conversation before this, and I was like, whoa, hold the phone. Let's save some of this so you don't have to repeat yourself as we were talking about the market. For those in the audience that don't know you, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do currently and maybe your background and how you got there?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So as you mentioned, VP of Loan Originations for Anchor Loans, one of the largest hard money lenders in the United States. Been with the company now for 17 years. So this is really all I know. This is all I've done. And getting into it, it's kind of an interesting background. I always had a passion for real estate. I always knew, creating wealth through real estate was the way to go. But I thought it was going to be more of on the, as a part-time thing for me, because I also had the passion of flying. I had dreams of being a pilot. And so even though I went to school for real estate finance, I was going through my training. This was early 2000s to be a pilot. And so I became a flight instructor out of John Wayne Airport, and I was teaching students how to fly. And during that time, September 11th hit, it was a very difficult time for the airline industry. And even coming up to about 2004, 2005, the airline industry hadn't recovered. And I remember being a certified flight instructor, and I had just gotten engaged. This was around 2005. And because the recovery of the airline industry still hadn't taken place, and I had close friends of mine that were certified flight instructors going on to the regionals like American Eagle, flying the Saabs, and they were grossing about $1,400 a month. And that's, living in Los Angeles, grossing $1,400 a month. I was just like, I'm not going to be able to raise a family on this. This is just too difficult. So I was lucky enough to come across actually one of my students, and their husband was partners of Anchor Loans, and I saw an opportunity there, and I had to make a life-changing decision on, well, I've spent all this money for all my flight training. Do I want to stick it out, or do I want to make this transition and go a completely different route? And that's when I decided to interview for Anchor Loans. And this was late 2005. And I started January of 2006, and I've been with Anchor ever since.
Wow. So about 17 years in the loan business.
Correct. Yeah. Now, when I started, so Anchor, they officially started around 1997, 1998, and they were primarily lending to the real estate investors that were buying at the auction in LA County. And so now when I came on, they needed, an inspector to, because they had to make quick decisions on lending on these properties, and a majority of them that the investors were buying in LA County were in South Central Los Angeles. So actually, when Anchor started, they were very instrumental in helping try to rehabilitate South Central. And that's where I spent a majority of my time when I first started, was inspecting properties located in South Central Los Angeles. And through that time, learning how to inspect properties, handle the draws, evaluating properties, driving comparables, talking to real estate agents, it basically helped me develop to come into the originator position, which I did full time starting probably in about 2012, kind of stepping back a little bit from there. So when I came on in 2006, the co-founders of Anchor already had reservations about the market. And, we know what happened in late 2007, 2008. So they cut originations back by about 50% in 2006. because they had the concerns. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to diversify their portfolio, and they had, based on the knowledge that they had and due to some of the lending regulations in Texas, they felt that originating money in Texas was going to be a safer play in the foreseeable future. So I ended up moving out to Texas with a couple of the Anchor Loans folks, opened up shop there and started originating in Texas while the recession came into play in late 2007, 2008. And so, we essentially, for the most part, stopped lending in California and started originating in Texas. We got some money out in Texas during those next couple of years, but it wasn't a lot. And then we had the opportunity, this was late 2008, 2009, to partner up with a second or third generation trustee sale buyer at LA County back in California. And so we ended up closing down the shop in Texas and coming back in late 2008, 2009 to start buying properties ourselves at the LA County trustee sale. Because believe it or not, during that Great Recession, there were on average 3,000 properties a day scheduled for foreclosure.
Wow.
And it was, there were some days that we were buying 15 houses in one day. And there was a lot of opportunity there because there was a lot of inefficiencies. Inefficiencies being there was tons of product going to trustee sale, but there weren't nearly as many investors down there buying. And so, and to be able to prepare for that many properties, it took a lot of manpower, and there was no way to prepare for all of those properties that were going to trustee sale. And so you would get extremely good deals because a lot of the other investors that were down there, or a few of the investors that were down there, weren't ready to bid on a property we ended up getting for a penny over. And so during that time, that's when we developed the Anchor Homes side of it's basically the acquisition and rehab business of our lending business, Anchor Loans. So we focused on that from about late 2008 to about 2014. And as Anchor Homes, we had bought and sold ourselves as investor developers over 1,500 homes.
Wow.
So, we had that experience and that background of flipping houses ourselves, and we had to develop our own internal construction department, which as a lender, it's a great department to have within a lending business because every lender is going to experience foreclosures. And when that does happen, Anchor actually has the ability to say, okay, well, do we want to just
do it ourselves,
wholesale this to one of our investors and provide the financing? Do we want to list it on the market and sell it? Or do we want to just fix it ourselves and try to, maximize the exposure when we go to relist? So that's generally what I was doing from about 2009 to 2014. I was in the war room every day at the trustee sale, acquiring properties. And then it was actually a great time for Anchor too, because it really helped us develop a large, client base, because we had this product, we couldn't do it all. And so we had the ability to be able to wholesale those properties to new potential Anchor clients that then we can just provide the financing,
the loans and financing for.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, a lot of those clients, Anchor, even from 1998, Anchor still has a lot of those same clients that we were lending to back then that are still in the business.
I want to touch on something that you said. I'm really curious to see if you're able to speak to this. If you're not, no worries. But a lot of people are, kind of comparing the last, 8 years of this crazy real estate market to, now we're in like the 2008, 2009 time, right? We've been in this bubble. It's going to pop again. You guys were able to see 2008 coming. You said y'all cut back your portfolio by 50%, got out of California and pivoted. What were y'all looking at that made you cut back 50%?
Yeah, it's a great question. One thing that Anchor has always done is, we have our own proprietary, analytics as far as the markets, right? And during that time, the signals were just going off as far as the rate of appreciation. At that time too, rates were going up. Inventory levels were increasing, and we all know that anyone at that time could get a loan, right? And so the co-founders, they were really good at that. They were ex poker players, and they had a really good sense of digging into the market data and being able to really forecast what they believe ended up being accurate. And good thing they did what they did, because there's a lot of lenders that didn't survive through that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that if they didn't cut back originations by 50%, there's probably a good chance we probably wouldn't have made it through that.
Is there anything that's going on today that has them worried? Any similarities, from the past, 2006, 2007? What is it looking like from their perspective, from the guys who, kind of foresaw 2008 coming?
Yeah, from now, keep in mind that it's a little bit different today as far as the ownership of Anchor, because those co-founders are basically retired now.
Okay.
And Pritium took over in late 2021. They purchased Anchor Loans, and as I mentioned to you before, Pritium is a $50 billion asset manager. They have a lot of diversity as far as owning companies in the space. And even though we have raised rates and reduced leverage in certain aspects, I have not been hearing anything from that side as far as anything like a crash coming like 2008. And I would say that if that was the case, and they were extremely concerned about that, because they're all about growth. They think they can take our business to at least a $3 to $5 billion a year origination company.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if they had real extreme concerns about the market, the leverage that we're offering today, I think would be a lot less.
Mm-hmm.
The rates that we're offering today, I think would be a lot higher, because those two really coincide as far as loan volume, right? The higher the rates, the less the leverage, the less volume you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we did $2 billion last year, and our projections are still, we're going to do 2.5 forecasted for this year. And so I don't think those forecasts would be coming out if they had a belief that this market was going to crash at 2000.
A big part about lending is where you're lending the money. Not all areas are created equal. Not all real estate products are created equal. Where do y'all have a criteria, or maybe a filter or a checklist that you guys are using to select which markets you want to be in?
Well, I would say this because, we are lending in 48 states. Okay. So we're essentially nationwide. We're only not in South Dakota and Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
And we do monitor the real estate market analytics constantly. And we do, for instance, within our loan matrix, we have the ability in which we take advantage of is when we see things turning in specific markets, we can adjust leverage there. And so as far as, our growth markets that we're really focusing on this year, because this is the surprising aspect of Anchor. Even though Anchor has been around for 25 years,
mm-hmm.
Anchor really didn't do a lot of marketing throughout that time. A lot of it was based on word of mouth. And so, Anchor is really well known in California because that's where we started, and that's where a lot of our volume has been. But we're not really known across the country, especially on the East Coast. And so, we do see a lot of opportunity on the East Coast and those areas, which we're really focusing on in 2023. And so, again, as far as the actual markets, we don't have, you've been hearing about some of these markets like Boise, Idaho. Austin, Texas, which, if we're originating a loan there, sure, we have to be cognizant of those were areas that went up 60% over the last couple of years. And because of that, those are the ones that are most likely, and we're already seeing it, they're getting hit the hardest through this slight correction, right? So when they might be down 20% because they went up the most during the period of rapid growth post-COVID, they're the areas that are going to see the biggest corrections. And if they're experiencing 20, a lot of other areas, just through a lot of the conversations I have daily and the meetups and the conferences that I attend, and the data that I read and the economists I follow, it seems like across the board right now we're probably down 5 to 10%. Just across the board. I understand that every market is there's a micro market, and every investor should really get to know and understand that local market as far as values, because just because everything across the board might be down 5 or 10% doesn't mean that local area is going to be that way. So we want to really grow eastward to the East Coast, and that's our focus for 2023.
Okay, so you guys see a lot of opportunity for some market share over on the East Coast. And it sounds like the rate of appreciation is an important factor. I've heard you bring that up twice now. That was one of the indications why y'all pulled back in 2006. And then that's one of the reasons why you said you think you're seeing, Austin and Boise, Idaho have some bigger corrections. And so that's an important variable to take into consideration, it sounds like. So as far as y'all's business goes, after COVID, did COVID change anything with the lending dynamics for you guys, or is everything back to pre-COVID times?
To answer that question, it's probably a good idea to go back and kind of play out what happened, during COVID and after, because that was a very interesting time. And I tell everyone, of the 17 years I've been doing this, that was actually the most stressful for me.
I bet it was. Canceling all the future loans, just dropping them off and having to call clients.
Well, we were fortunate enough because there was a lot of lenders in this space that were in that just stopped lending. And we fortunately didn't stop lending. We did raise rates because of the uncertainties. And I think at that point, again, like I've said, you have that indirect relationship. Raising rates is going to decrease volume. And so during a time of uncertainty, you're just not going to want to put the gas on the pedal and originate as much as you can until you figure out what's going on. And so, there was a lot of changes happening at that time, a lot of uncertainty, capital markets was going crazy. And we experienced, because there was a lot of investors, their deals, their loans were getting canceled at the closing table because these lenders stopped originating. And so that's when we were able to step in and really help with that and actually gain a good market share of clients during that time, because their lender left them at the closing table because either they were relying on that secondary market that completely stopped buying loans. And it was short-lived as we know, because that probably lasted maybe 2 months, and then things started easing up again, and then we saw the money coming back into the market, and the lenders that stopped originating are coming back in, and they came back very aggressively. They, their rates, with their leverage, it seemed as if there was a time there post-COVID that, it was even more aggressive as far as the competition than pre-COVID. There's competitors in this space that even still today in this market are lending, 100% financing, 90, 100 leverage. And so, to answer your question, pre versus post-COVID, given what has happened recently in 2022, I think there's been more of a shift as far as what's happening in this space than what happened post COVID between, March of 2020 to 2021 versus April of 2022 to now.
When you say shift, what do you mean? There's been a shift in this.
Yeah, there's been a shift in the space to now where I feel like we're almost going into a reset, because we're definitely not back at the level of interest rates and leverage that we were post-COVID. And, given where conventional rates are now, is this going to be the new norm? Because I can tell you, 8 years ago, we were getting money out all day long at 12 and 3, 12% and 3 points. And then a lot of money started flowing into the space, drove rates down, costs down. And then COVID hit, there was a period of, uncertainty. And then it seemed like much more money. Well, I won't say much more, but a lot of money came in post-COVID, and there could be the impact too of the quantitative easing that was taking place post-COVID. The amount of money that the Fed was creating, right, which drove rates, like I said, even potentially lower than what was pre-COVID. But now, the bond market started going crazy around March, April of 2022. And even though they've settled back down a little bit, but look at where the conventional rates are now. So when there was historically a spread of, let's say, 4 to 6% between conventional rates and hard money, come post April 2022, I mean, it got to the point when conventional rates were 7% and Anchor was originating at 9%. There was only a 200 basis point spread there, which historically it's too close.
Yeah, it's got to go up.
Yeah, and that's also why a lot, we've seen rates increase. And so, altogether, we're probably up since March of 2022, we're probably up, I'd say 250 to 300 basis points, just, as far as rates, but, everyone's up on the rates.
Yeah.
And so, but now when before, hard money, 7 to 9% on average, and now we're seeing 9 to 11, is that the new norm? And also the reductions in leverage, is that going to stay? Because, just like we've seen before in uncertain times, there's really 2 ways to reduce leverage. That's with LTC and LTV. And like, for instance, for us, when things were going great and the market was strong, we were willing to go all the way up to 80% of ARB. And then come April, when we started seeing month over month declines in certain markets, as soon as we saw that, we realized that we needed to cut back a little bit on leverage, cut that to 75%. And then recently in November, December, we made another adjustment to 70. So when things are going great in the market, we're willing to push on leverage. But when things are not going so well, or there's signs that things are changing, then we need to cut back. And to give you another example, when we were going to 90-100 on leverage before, we recently cut that back to 85-100. And so, the big question is this lower leverage going to stay for a while, or is this just a temporary thing? And then when things start going well and improving again, are we going to be back up to 90-100 in some of these higher leverage points? So, it's definitely different now because, like I said, rates are higher, costs are higher, leverage is lower, and we haven't seen this in a really long time.
Yeah, everyone's gotten so used to everything being so low, and the Fed's just been allowing this economy to just really cook and huff and puff. I think they should have raised rates a while ago, a little bit more mildly, instead of that. That's what's contributed to, having the inflation come rampant when you make a bunch of cheap money, and then
Right.
you get COVID come that creates these supply chain issues and lack of building products and availability for. I mean, you're gonna get inflation from that, and then they're gonna have to try to pull the lever to bring it down. You said something that we were touching on before we started, and I want to talk about some of the differentiating factors with lenders, because I think most people look at lenders as like a number. All right, what are your points and what's your interest rate? And there's so many other variables that should go into the consideration when selecting a lending partner. I mean, you guys aren't the cheapest out there. There's customer service. Are they holding it in-house versus selling it on the secondary market? How long can they turn things around? Do they have to require appraisal ahead of time? There's so many variables. Talk a little bit to some of the differentiating factors. If someone was looking at a lender and maybe this was their first time and they weren't very they hadn't been in the industry for a while, they haven't done this before, what are some of those background factors to consider?
Absolutely. Great question. First of all, they need to look at the longevity of the lender, right? How long have they been in the business? There's a lot of other lenders that have popped up recently that are really just getting started. And especially with all the changes that's happening on the capital market side, it can really affect that business. And so, you want to definitely look at companies that have been doing this for a long time. You also want to focus on lenders that do internal sales like us. What I mean by that is, doing an internal sale of the loans so that way they're not reliant on the secondary market of selling those loans. Because what ends up happening is when you're relying on a third party loan buyer, they have their specific box that you have to originate in order for them to buy that loan, right? But as an originator, you have no control over that box. So when they change that box and you have a portfolio of loans that are now no longer fitting in that box, you can get in some real trouble real quick.
Yeah, that's why you saw a lot of lenders backing out at the closing table, is because they knew they weren't going to be able to sell it on their secondary market, whereas you guys hold them in-house. So the likelihood of that happening is a whole lot lower.
Exactly. Another aspect too that you brought up regarding appraisals, the hard money, which I know now that, that term is now changing to private money. The private money space, it's all about speed, ease of access of that money. And, there's still a lot of lenders out there that require appraisals to get in, to be, completed, reviewed, and approved before they actually fund the deal. And if you're working with a lender that requires that, it's going to be really hard to close quickly. Mm-hmm. And as an investor or developer, when you're making offers and you got to close in 10 business days and you have to wait for an appraisal to come back, that's really difficult. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're fortunate enough to be able to fund our loans based on Anchor's own internal valuation of the property. And that usually just takes 1 to 2 business days to complete. And so, we can fund actually on our own internal value and not have to wait for an appraisal to come back in order to fund it. Mm-hmm. And another big concern with having to wait for an appraisal back is that you really don't know until that appraisal comes back if you're going to be able to get the leverage that you're looking for, because the leverage is all based on that value. Mm-hmm. Right? The most lenders originate off of loan to cost, but they have LTV limits. And so let's say that appraisal comes back, 2 days before you're supposed to close, and the value comes in low, and now they're reducing your loan amount. It's going to require more cash out of pocket from you. That's a tough pill to swallow. Mm-hmm. So that's another big thing to look for as far as lenders are concerned. The speed, you want to be able to be working with a lender that has the capability of closing quickly, because you want to be able to be competitive in this market. You need to be competitive in this market. Flexibility, as I mentioned, even though we have a loan matrix, Anchor's really been known to, as far as being flexible, out of the box deals, in situations where flexibility is required in order to get the loan to the finish line. And so, and also lenders that have that variety of boxes of lending guidelines and what they lend on. A lender that does small renovations to large renovations, even new construction, because that's kind of the progression of real estate investors, right? They go from starting out doing smaller deals into bigger deals. And, a lot of anchor real estate investors, that's how they grew. They were maybe starting out doing small cosmetic renovations in South Central LA, and, doing $20,000-$30,000 renovations. And that's how they started. And today you look at them and they're building brand new multi-million-dollar homes, because that's where their business evolved. So they went from small cosmetic rehabs to small additions to larger additions. And then also too, with the market of what it's done, over the last 12 years, that kind of helped with where the progression of these real estate investors had to go. Because as things got more expensive, those small cosmetic remodels or those small addition plays didn't work anymore. The only way to really for a deal to make sense now is you had to tear it down and build new. And so, but as you grow as an investor, you want to be working with a lender that's going to be able to offer you a product that's going to fit in that progress throughout your career. And most investors that are flipping or developing, they also have rental portfolios. Does your lender offer a rental product, right? It's always good to have that secondary exit strategy too. And have that lender, having a lender that is like a one-stop shop, right? Instead of having multiple lenders for all these different plays, it makes it much easier for you as an investor and developer to have one lender that can service all your financing needs.
I want to talk about that. So, and that's one thing you guys do a really good job of is one-stop shop. Y'all got a bunch. Y'all got rental products. You've got fix and flip products. You've got the, new construction projects. We've got a few new construction projects going on with you guys. Where are y'all focused on right now, going forward during the current economic environment? Do y'all see, I guess speak to a little bit about what is the focus on your fix and flip products? Is there specific price points that, y'all are focused on? What does the leverage look like? Or, and then new construction, are there, specific areas or, specific price points that y'all are, more aggressive on versus not? And, the same thing for the rental product.
Okay, so starting with on the flips, I mean, it'd probably be a good idea to just kind of give you an overview of some of the recent changes that we've implemented just due to what's been happening in the markets. And so, for instance, on the flips, before for like our higher tier clients, and when I talk about higher tier, I'm talking about a lot of experience, excellent credit. We're able to go to 90-100 leverage, 90% of purchase price, 100% of rehab. That had recently been reduced to like 85-100. So you're seeing some of these leverage cuts on just basically across the board. Stepping into new construction, before all of this, we were lending based off 85% LTC leverage, which that recently got cut to 80%. When we were going to 75% of ARV across the board, that recently got cut to 70. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to result in not being able to get the leverage. As far as, if you're getting pitched 85-100 from a lender, but they cut the loan to future value, doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get 85-100 because the LTV was cut. It's just basically saying that we want the loan amount to fit within just a lower completed future value. But from flips to new construction, it's mainly just been rate increases and leverage reductions. And then as far as the rentals are concerned, that's a very important product to have from a lender standpoint too, because especially in market shifts like this, you want to have that secondary market exit. right? And so like, let's say you have a property on the market and it's not selling. You want to be able to have the ability to refinance, rent it out, and hang on to it as as a rental property. And that's what I would be doing as a investor developer now. I'd be underwriting deals to say that, look, if it doesn't sell at this ARV I'm projecting, would the numbers still work as a rental? And so the flips, new construction, and rental loans. I mean, there's definitely been a variety of changes throughout, but I would say the most impacted have probably been the rental loans, because those are more often relying on that secondary market. And so, I'm seeing rental loans now as high as 9.5%. That's where they've gone. I mean, I'm seeing rental loans almost higher than your bridge rates. It's been pretty incredible to see where that's gone. I'm thinking pretty soon here, though, that there's going to be some downward pressure on that, and it's going to be lower rates. That's what I'm hoping for. Because it's hard for someone to stomach getting into a 30-year fixed loan at 9.5%.
Yeah, it's tough to make those things pencil in cash flow for sure.
Right, exactly. And to meet the DSCR minimums, ours is 1.0, which is definitely reasonable. But with those higher rates, it's often difficult to meet that unless you're taking a lot less leverage.
Yep. No, definitely more. It's going to be interesting as we move forward, because I think the rental market's going to be pretty good as people get driven out of affordability due to the interest rates, inability to buy. Well, what do you do?
Right.
You're going to rent, and you've got millennials that are at prime home buying age right now. They're looking to get into something, and they don't want to live in apartments anymore. They want a single family home. And I think that's one of the reasons you've seen this build to rent space just explode. One is the millennials wanting to rent and not be held down, and they just can't afford a new product or an existing product at the current rates. And then the baby boomers are, retiring 10,000 a day. They're looking to downsize, right? They want one-story houses now. They want the benefits of single family, but none of the headaches. So they want something new. They want something to rent. So it's really interesting to see how the rental market's going to evolve with these higher rates. For those that want to learn more about Anchor Loans, or maybe get the process started, what should they do?
Yeah, they can first, visit our website, www.anchorloans.com. It gives them a good overview of Anchor and all of our backgrounds, executives and management backgrounds, and then they can either call the number there, or they can even email me direct at ShaneL@anchorloans.com. And I'd be happy to assist. We're pretty easy to get a hold of, and we're always available.
Shane, man, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to hop on and speak with us today.
Absolutely. Really appreciate it, Brandon. Let's do it again.
All right. See you, man.
All right. Take care.